You know that quiet, low-key panic that sets in right before a data audit? Yeah, if you've ever sat down with a chief data officer or an enterprise data leader, you've probably seen it. And honestly, it usually comes down to one massive, looming question. What does it actually mean to make data governance measurable? It's a puzzle that literally plagues organizations all over the world. We spend months, sometimes even years, writing up these incredibly detailed data policies. But at the end of the day, how do we actually know they're working?
Well, the answer is pretty straightforward, but man, is it tough to execute. It means turning governance from policy into proof. Organizations have to validate whether their governed data is actually accurate, complete, and behaving exactly as expected across their entire ecosystem. It's just not enough anymore to have a beautifully written document sitting out on a shared drive somewhere. True governance requires concrete, undeniable evidence.
So, welcome to The Explainer. Our mission today is to totally demystify enterprise data validation and show you exactly how to make your data governance measurable. We're going to look at how to take those strong policies and ensure the actual data backing them up is meaningful, trustworthy, and completely ready for any audit you throw at it.
All right, here's our game plan for today. First, we'll cover the data governance gap. Second, the risks of data drift. Third, moving from policy to proof. Fourth, key data governance KPIs. And finally, automating trust with query search.
Let's jump right into part one, the data governance gap. Here's the really frustrating reality for a lot of enterprises right now. Governance, for the most part, is basically just an exercise in manual documentation. Most organizations actually do a fantastic job defining their standards, assigning ownership, and mapping out controls. But having a policy on paper absolutely does not guarantee the data is trustworthy in production. The real struggle is demonstrating that this governed data stays accurate as it bounces around incredibly complex enterprise environments. Because let's face it, governance is basically impossible to trust if it can't be tested or proven.
Which brings us to part two, the risks of data drift. Think about the crazy journey a single piece of critical data takes in the real world. It starts out in a source system, right? Then it gets pulled through ETL or ELT jobs, pushed up into cloud platforms, dumped into data warehouses or lakes, and finally, hopefully, it surfaces in BI tools and business dashboards. Every single one of those handoffs is a major danger zone. As data flows across this architecture, your governance is practically guaranteed to get lost if you aren't actively checking it. And honestly, those danger zones are where things go off the rails. Massive governance risks just start popping up everywhere. Data definitions drift between systems. Suddenly, critical fields are incomplete or totally inconsistent. All those complex transformations you built, they introduce hidden defects. The result is that your reports no longer reflect the trusted source data, and your business users completely lose faith. And the worst part? When auditors, compliance teams, or stakeholders ask for evidence that your controls are actually working, governance teams just don't have the proof. Without validation, governance is entirely reactive, super manual, and inevitably fails audits.
Okay, moving on to part three, moving from policy to proof.
I know, that sounds a little grim, right? But here is how we actually fix it. The core theme of our explainer today is bridging this massive gap between what we want our data to be and what it actually is. It's the classic contrast between intent and execution. Data governance is your intent. It sets the rules for trusted data. But data validation? That's the execution. That's what actually proves those rules are being followed in practice. Writing the rules is completely different from enforcing them. Validation is the missing link that actually proves governance is happening out there in the wild.
But to be clear, we're not just talking about any validation here. Automated validation is the bridge between intent and evidence. If we want to survive today's massive data architectures, we absolutely have to ditch the manual spot checks, the giant spreadsheets, and those one-off SQL queries. It just doesn't scale. We need to tie our policies directly to repeatable tests, shifting over to continuous operational automation.
Let's look at part 4, key data governance KPIs.
So you're probably wondering, okay, but how do we actually measure this stuff? To really measure governance, teams need to define expected thresholds and then continuously test the data against them. Your metrics should be tracking things like accuracy rates, completeness, consistency, overall defect volume, rule pass rates, and exception trends. And the whole purpose of tracking these? They measure the harsh reality of your data against the thresholds you actually set. This is exactly the kind of documented, rock-solid evidence that compliance and audit teams are looking for. When you track these KPIs consistently, data quality finally becomes measurable.
And finally, part 5, automating trust with query search. So how on earth do we actually pull this off at an enterprise scale without hiring an entire army of manual testers? Well, here's how a solution like Query Search brings execution straight into data governance. Step 1, instead of waiting until the very end of the pipeline when it's too late, you build validation directly into your ETL and ELT delivery workflows. Step 2, it compares source and target data to make absolutely sure critical elements stay accurate while they move and transform. Step 3, it enforces data quality rules like sniffing out duplicates, checking for nulls, and maintaining referential integrity, but it does it at massive scale. And Step 4, it documents every single result, giving you perfectly audit-ready evidence. It literally turns governance into a continuous operational machine.
The beautiful thing is this kind of automation scales across the whole board. Let's rapid-fire a few of these key use cases. You can use it for enterprise data governance to make sure standards are applied without fail. It is an absolute must-have for regulatory and compliance reporting, proving sensitive data is completely accurate before any disclosures. It locks down master data governance to get rid of mismatched records. It's a total lifesaver during data migrations and cloud shifts. It builds BI and analytics trust so your business users can actually believe what they see on their dashboards. And it powers continuous control monitoring, running validations either on a schedule or whenever an event triggers them.
At the end of the day, the measurable ROI is what it's all about, right? Organizations do this because it completely replaces the nightmare of manual oversight. Those endless spreadsheets and spot checks are gone, replaced by repeatable automation. It catches defects way earlier in the process, well before they blow up downstream systems or ruin management decisions. Ultimately, it dramatically boosts your trust in operational, analytical, and regulatory data, which takes a massive chunk out of your overall business risk. Automated validation makes governance efficient, highly defensible, and most importantly, scalable.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a question to chew on. Take a hard look at your own enterprise architecture today and ask yourself, are you just defining standards, or are you actually proving them? Because in the world we live in today, good intent just isn't enough anymore. You need the proof. Thank you so much for joining me to explore how we can finally make data governance measurable.